Hello there, welcome to Genesis Models. I'm Bill Boudreau. I'm glad you could join me for episode 15 of our AMK F-14 build. And I think this is going to be the final episode as we're getting near to being done with this aircraft. All we have left to do is just some final assembly on there that I'll show you in this particular episode before we get into the final review. But as you can see, we put on our flat coat, leaving off from the last episode. We have our flat coat all over the aircraft, and I really like the sheen of that Tamiya lacquer paint flat coat. Produced exactly the finish that I was hoping for. So we're going to focus on assembly of our intricate landing gear pieces. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that are going all over this aircraft, and I think as long as we kind of show the landing gear assembly operation, it'll be easy to kind of tackle the rest of the airframe too. But first I want to start it off with my nose landing gear issue, because I do have a major issue here where when I take this nose landing gear and I put it in, we've got our hole there for it. So I got it positioned in there. I can't actually rotate that nose landing gear so that it's aligned with the longitudinal axis of the airframe. Now, I don't know if I did. I don't think I had made an error when I was assembling that nose landing gear bay. I went back and looked at that episode where we did that, and everything went together so smoothly. So I have no idea why that, is like that. If that's kind of a design flaw with the kit or what have you. So what we're going to do to resolve this, if I can just kind of get that piece out. What we're going to do to kind of take care of that is, if you can see the landing gear structure here, let me get some focus. We're actually just going to take the width of these areas down so that when we get that width down, we'll be able to rotate that piece in place along that longitudinal axis. So grab a nice little skinny stick here, and we will just start taking down this particular width of the landing gear. Just keep sanding away. This really isn't a, let me get a more coarse stick right here. And this isn't going to show when we glue it in there, so I'm not really worried about taking away the paint. I'm not really worried about anything with taking down this thickness. Obviously, the priority is having to get this landing gear aligned. All right, I think we got it here. Let's see. So now we got them pretty thin. Certainly a lot thinner than what they were. So let's see if we can get some alignment here. Get it in there. There we go. That's much better. So as you can tell, we now have alignment of our landing gear along our longitudinal axis. So maybe sanded down a little too much, because now I can over rotate, but that's okay. I think it's holding pretty vertical. All right, so that's it for that nose landing gear here. There's going to be a bunch of other little pieces, some doors and whatnot to attach on there, but I want to shift over to our main landing gear. Here's our piston and cylinder assembly. Pretty complex piece right here. When we start to bring in this drag brace, and then we got a couple other pieces here that I'll show you in a sec. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take our drag brace here, and the instruction manual does tell you that when you build up your landing gear and assemble, the scissors and everything onto it, to go ahead and take your drag brace right there and put it there as an assembly. But what I found is that there's a lot of play when you get that piece attached to the landing gear assembly. And I didn't necessarily like that level of play, especially when, we get it here in our landing gear bay. See if I can get that in there. There's a lot of flex here and alignment that has to go on. So if you can tell, let me get positioned over here. If you can tell, there is a little notch right here that our drag brace actually fits into. So if we wait until drag assembly and installation of this drag brace until the end here, we get a little better alignment with that drag brace going into that appropriate slot there. So we have 3 attachment points of this main landing gear. Of course, you know, the main attachment point down in the rectangular slot that's down here. We have this one for the drag brace, and then we also have this this extension right here where there is a notch in the airframe that actually aligns with. And those are kind of the 3 main attachment points for our landing gear assembly. And in terms of what glue do we use when we're attaching and doing this final assembly on landing gear, my answer to that would be, you know, it depends on the level of flexibility that you need with what you're assembling. And in this case, you know, because I showed you that there's some alignment needs for, you know, certainly this drag brace right here on both connection ends, as well as making sure that we get alignment on that cross section that mates with the airframe. You know, I want to use the flexibility to my advantage for this whole drag brace assembly. I want to use the flexibility of our main attachment point in that rectangular slot. But this landing gear does have the tendency to want to slip away from the airframe. So what I would actually do, and will do here in a second, is I'm going to use super glue at this attachment point on the airframe. And what that'll do is that'll give me that good hard attachment point right there at a key portion on the airframe so that we don't get that tendency of the landing gear to move away from it. But yet at the same time, we're going to be using, you know, some extra thin cement on these other attachment points where we want that flexibility. It takes a little slower to dry than super glue, so we have a little more work and time to get things into position. So let me get this back over here on this camera, and let's go ahead and glue this particular assembly in place. So first thing I'm going to do here is actually just kind of get, you know, some super glue on a little cardboard. We'll get that there. I don't have a paper towel near me, so I'll just put that aside. And I will get a cocktail stick. Get a little bit of super glue on our cocktail stick. We'll come over here and we will attach a little bit of super glue onto our airframe. Actually, let me get some super glue on the very tip. Let me just come in that way. So a little super glue there, and then might as well also get a little super glue on that tip. All right, so we got that working for us. Now let's go ahead and get some Tamiya extra thin cement, and let's go ahead and douse this rectangular area. We'll douse it here as well, all the way around. We'll get a good dollop of it where our drag brace connects. And where did my drag brace go? Okay, here we go. So we'll get that attached there. And let's go ahead and get this in place. We'll get our alignment on our drag strut, and then we'll get our press on our super glue. Then we will come in with some Tamiya extra thin here, and we'll douse it on our drag brace connection point right there. Now these liquid cements, they will eventually eat their way through the paint that's on all of these pieces. And I'm pushing against the airframe here so that I can keep that connection point, so that I can keep this connection point right here. And I can't really move this away from the airframe. So the super glue did its job. It needed the flexibility with this drag brace and down here at the main connection point to get everything aligned. And there we go. I think our landing gear is good and well in place. But now we've got a couple other small pieces. I don't know what kind of assembly this is, but it's actually an intricate little piece that attaches to the inboard side of our landing gear and drag brace. So a couple connection points. We have one right here on our drag brace, and that's where this kind of round connection point goes, right up here up front. And then the other side, this particular area of this piece actually connects to the back side of our connection point right here. Let me see if I can point that out. So this piece right here, the aft side of it. So let's go ahead and get some extra thin, sorry, a little off camera here. We'll get some extra thin on the outboard side here. Get this on tweezers. And we will just kind of start there. And we will get that connected. Sorry if my hand's in the way, but I need to get good positioning here. All right, hopefully you saw that. We've got a good connection point on our drag brace right there. And now we need to kind of turn this around. Get the, actually, here we go. All right, there we go. So you can tell this one's kind of moving a little bit on me. And this is trying to get this, there we go. So now we got good contact points between both. All right, we do have another piece that needs to go on. This is kind of an actuator assembly that actually is an attachment point between our drag brace and our actual main landing gear strut here. So we just want to make sure that we get this orientated correctly. And not sure if I can show you here, but there's actually another slot right here within the main landing gear. If you can tell, there is, let me see if I can get a good angle here. There's this little slot right there. And then on the top side of the drag brace, see if I can get that angle here, get some focus. We actually have a recess right here within our drag brace, right there, where that actuator piece actually mounts into. So we have two good contact points for that particular actuator assembly. So let's go ahead and get that one glued in. And get this recentered again. All right, so we're going to get another dollop of our extra thin. We'll put it right in that slot. That's on our main landing gear. So we can just put glue in on one end for now, and then we'll take our actuator and we'll fit it right in there. All right. There we go. And then the other side actually aligns pretty well. Here's that contact point right there for the other side. And it aligns pretty well, where all we can do is just come in with another dollop of our quick setting. and just put it right on there. And that should fuse nicely as well. All right. Well, there we have it. We have our other main landing gears set in place. Having that super glue really kind of keeps it secure, while at the same time we get some good strong connections at all those other points where we use the quick setting. So you can see that these main landing gears, they actually are canted outward from the airframe. And then if we look at it in this direction, you can see that there's actually maybe a little bit of an angle, aft from top to bottom. So that's kind of the configuration of the landing gear, and both of them are symmetrical in that point from that perspective. So good to go there. And with using that, quick setting cement here on front, I actually have a little bit of working time where we can get the rest of the struts and doors and everything that kind of attach to the nose landing gear. So that's all I kind of wanted to show in this episode. I mean, if you're able to do the landing gear aspects, you can finish up everything else on this aircraft pretty simplistically, I think. Landing gear, doors, the rest of the way. Let me just kind of show this particular landing gear door too. What kind of glue you use on a landing gear door also depends on, when you dry fit that landing gear door on there. Does it stay? Is it going to fall off, right? If it falls off immediately, then you might have to use some super glue so that you could, get a good contact there relatively quickly. But I can tell you that for this one, having the other side assembled already, these landing gear doors, all of them, they just kind of stay in place when you dry fit them. So I'm just going to be coming in with, the quick setting cement and just putting that on all of the attachment points for the different landing gear door that litter around this entire aircraft. We do have our bottom side speed brake installed with the actuators. You can tell that I did work one of the wing flaps, right? So that's in position, but we still have our spoilers to do. We have our front slats to do. We have our aft speed brake here to put on. I do have our canopy all set here, the front windscreen, so that can go on, and as well as our main canopy that's going to be in the open position. So we'll get those two pieces mounted. Let me get that wrapped back up to keep them protected. We've got the missile and pylon assemblies. All I've got to do, you can see I've got the AIM-9 on here. We'll get the Sparrow on that one as well. Now for these, what's interesting to note is, same thing too related to the glue, right? When we get these installed into their necessary hole mounting points, right here and here, actually do a pretty good job of staying. They don't really fall out. So I think I'm going to come in there with some quick setting cement, get that all in there, and then make the attachment point there. Hold it for a few seconds and we'll be good to go there. What else? I mean, we've got the ejection seats that'll go in. We've got just, the engines, of course. We'll get these engines installed. The wheels, of course, we'll get those in. So really, it's just a lot of, kind of ticky-tack final assembly, so to speak, that we'll finish up here. So let me keep pushing forward with that. Okay, so I pushed ahead with assembly, and now what we're going to do here is we're going to put our last couple bits on our pod here, our camera pod. We'll get some crystal clear here. There are actually a couple clear parts, so I'm just going to use some micro crystal clear, and we'll get a little bit inside. We don't need a lot. They're small pieces, so I'll just leave that there for now. And one little trick that I like to do with these small parts is taking a little bit of blue tack, getting it on my finger, and then we can take our little tiny part. Hopefully you can see that here. Little tiny part. Let's make sure I get the right side. put it right on our blue tack there. Okay, there we go. And we can go ahead and fit that right into our pod assembly, lining it up well. And not worry about dropping the part, and then just peel in. Well, I got the blue tack off my finger anyway, but we got the part in its recess, and now it's just a matter of separating the blue tack from the actual part. So we'll let that set up a little bit. Actually, my blue tack got a little flattened on me here. Far better than dropping the part and having to find it on the floor and on your work surface. There we go. Okay, so we'll just let that sit for a little bit, and then we'll get our blue tack off of our part. Then we've got one more here. And what I did with both of these parts, as you can tell, is I actually put a little black paint on the reverse side of it. So we'll get our nippers here right up very close. All right. I think it was small enough contact point, but there is a little burr, so I'm gonna take my sanding stick and just kind of round that out just a little bit. And same story, right? A little bit of blue tack there. Part going on our finger. Let's get our crystal clear. Don't need much, just maybe a touch or two. 3 touches there, 120 degrees apart. Put that aside, and let's go ahead and let's get this part put on there. All right, so we got that. So I'm just going to need my tweezers here to separate everything. Okay, we will let that sit. Okay. All right, and there we go. We have our blue tack off of our pod, glass pieces, and that's it. We're pretty much done. So yeah, maybe just a few thoughts on this particular kit. I actually enjoyed it every step of the way through the assembly and painting it, and this is an absolute fabulously detailed kit. I mean, just, you know, starting from the nose here, you know, you can see that whole one-piece nose assembly where you didn't really have to fight a seam line. That's like a modeler's dream, right? I give kudos to the engineer who came up with that, you know, cockpit tub sliding into that full-piece nose section, and how well it mated to the entire fuselage assembly. That's like every modeler's dream right there, not having to fight seam lines. You know, coming back to this main fuselage structure, you know, there's a lot of attention to detail that needs to go on when you're assembling that. I mean, just those intake ramps, the subsonic or supersonic positions, you know, that was some complex assembly there. You know, everything from these trunks here, the one-piece trunk assemblies going on there, and then having to manage, you know, the full assembly there with your walls of your main landing gear, wheel well bays, all of that put together. It's just, you know, a complex assembly operation that you have, and it took a couple episodes to kind of talk everybody through that. So, and one thing I wish I would have done was I wish I would have just put the wings on as I was joining those fuselage half assemblies together. You know, I thought I'd get a little creative and maybe make it so that they could slide on and off. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters which route you go through. You know, you can do it both ways. So, and And the rest of the aircraft, I mean, it was just so simple to put together once you got past the main fuselage assembly. And look at the detail all over. I mean, we've got a nice weapons package here. Absolute gorgeous, you know. Coming alongside here, we have all of the detail. That's just, you know, the panel lines and the rivets and protrusions, the hinges back here for this engine access panel, just absolute stunning detail all over the aircraft. And even, you know, inside our cockpit assembly there, you know, I know that I didn't like, you know, on those decals, the green screens that were so bright and vivid, so I backed those down a little bit with the black. But overall, I mean, I think this cockpit assembly is just absolutely stunning to look at, even using just the decals. And these wings too, I mean, look at these wings here, you know, with those spoilers and slats extended and everything, and, you know, the flap that is, you know, fully extended there. I think it's just absolutely stunning detail with these wings. So overall, you know, I would really build this kit a second time. This has been a pretty solid kit to build, and I think if you take it slow and you just kind of really look through those instructions, test fit, test fit, test fit, I think everything would go together very, very smoothly for anybody, you know, whether you're a basic modeler or an average modeler. You know, as an advanced modeler, you'd get a lot of kicks with everything that's going on with this aircraft. So overall, 2 thumbs up, and I highly, highly recommend this particular kit. So I would build another one, like I said before. So maybe a little bit of constructive criticism on this kit, though. There are a couple things where I didn't really like too much on them. One thing is I know I didn't talk about it during the build, but a lot of the glass pieces for the positional lights and everything, you know, you can see right here, we got a couple on the bottom side. Let me show you here. We got a couple on the bottom side as well. And then, of course, our nav lights on the wings and whatnot on the very tips. So I didn't like how the clear pieces fit. They were protruding above the surface of the aircraft, and I decided not to use them. I used a little bit of microcrystal clear there. I didn't show that during the assembly, but I think overall the end result is actually pretty good for those various lights. And it's flush with the surface of the aircraft, so a little bit better finish there, I think. So a little bit disappointing that they didn't have good quality fit there with those clear pieces. And then the other thing too to talk about was, you know, these engine exhausts. Not so much the nozzles here, but more so the tubes that go inside the fuselage structure. You know, I really battled with that seam line, that you know, with that 2-piece construction there. That seam line was just kind of a little bit horrific to deal with. I did think that it was going to show more, but now that I just kind of look into these exhausts, it doesn't show as badly as what I thought, and I think a lot of it has to do with the shadows. Plus, actually, you know, if you recall, we did try to disguise that seam line with a black stripe of paint there, just kind of that smoky color that's inside those exhausts. That did a little bit of a trick there, but overall I think, you know, they could have done a better job at that, so it didn't make, you know, maybe some people building this kit struggle so much with that. I certainly struggled with it. Maybe you didn't, but it was just kind of a disappointing aspect to that particular kit. But other than that, those are really the only 2 gripes that I have with this particular model. All right, well, that's it. I'm going to actually leave you with some final review shots of this particular kit while I go think about the next step-by-step build that I'll do. And yeah, this was my first step-by-step build for Bobby and for Genesis models, and I promise I will get better and better the more that I do. So hopefully you enjoyed this 15-part series of the AMK F-14D Tomcat build. I'm Bill Boudreau, this is Genesis Models, and I hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah. Sometimes I get so mad, there's no controlling me. My thoughts get so bad, I'm like, I might grab a bat, I don't know. My wrath, my blood boils over like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show. So have you ever felt betrayed? Switches how you see things, realize something needs change. Cause I know you got me fucked up, let me show you what's up. Cause enough is enough. I'll take a face full of pavement just to make a statement. I know there's no turning back. Oh God, adrenaline wasted, so mad I can taste it. I know there's no turning back. I'll do what it takes, I ain't making mistakes like that. I'll play it on your face just to make you go take it back. I'll lose my shit, I go crazy when I'm mad. And now you go wish you would shut the fuck up real bad. And now that I'm gone, yeah, I know there's no turning back. And now that I'm gone, yeah, I know there's no turning back. I don't fucking take smoke, I'ma poke a hole through you, choking's overdue. Come at me and you won't get any older, dude. Crack your holder too. Heating up inside of me, blood so violently. Thanks for trying me. Now it's finally time to see how this rivalry becomes a dynasty.